A faulty O2 sensor can send incorrect information to the powertrain control module of PCM, leading to poor fuel economy, increased emissions, and even potential damage to other components like the catalytic converter. In this video, we'll explore the cause and symptoms of a bad oxygen sensor, how to diagnose the issue, and what you can do to fix it. Subscribe to the channel for more cheap car repair tips. The oxygen sensor detects whether the engine's air-fuel mixture is too rich or too lean by comparing the oxygen levels in the exhaust gases to the oxygen in the outside air. Inside the sensor is a small but essential component called the Nernst cell, which generates a voltage based on this comparison. This voltage is then sent to the vehicle's PCM, which uses this information to adjust the fuel injection in real time, ensuring your engine runs as efficiently as possible. There are two types of O2 sensors: narrowband and wideband. Narrowband O2 sensors measure oxygen levels by comparing the exhaust's oxygen content with that of the ambient air and provide a simple on-off signal indicating whether the mixture is rich or lean. They operate within a narrow voltage range, typically between 0.1 to 0.9 volts, and they are common on older vehicles. Wideband O2 sensors, also known as lambda or air-fuel ratio sensor, on the other hand, provide exact air-fuel ratio instead of just indicating rich or lean conditions. Most vehicles on the road today are equipped with at least two oxygen sensors. These are strategically placed in the exhaust system, with one located before the catalytic converter, often referred to as the upstream sensor, and another one positioned downstream, after the catalytic converter. The upstream sensor plays a crucial role in regulating the air-fuel ratio by measuring the oxygen levels in the exhaust gases before they enter the catalytic converter. Meanwhile, the downstream sensor's job is to assess the efficiency of the catalytic converter by measuring the oxygen levels after the exhaust gases have passed through it. They come in 1, 2, 3, and 4-wire configurations, each adding functionality and improving performance. A one-wire sensor sends a basic signal to the engine control module and relies on exhaust heat to function. Two-wire sensors add a dedicated ground wire, and three-wire sensors introduce a heater element, enabling the sensor to reach operating temperature faster. Four-wire sensors, common in most vehicles today, include separate grounds for both the signal and heater, providing the most accurate readings and quickest response time. Common causes of oxygen sensor failure. Oxygen sensors are positioned directly in the exhaust stream, which means they're constantly exposed to a harsh environment. Over time, this exposure can lead to contamination. Some of the most common sources of contamination include a rich fuel mixture, where excess fuel doesn't burn completely and leaves carbon deposits on the sensor. Carbon buildup is a frequent reason for oxygen sensor failure. When fuel doesn't burn completely, it leaves behind carbon deposits that accumulate on the sensor, affecting its ability to accurately measure the oxygen levels in the exhaust. This can lead to incorrect readings and poor engine performance. The use of low-quality fuel can exacerbate this issue, making it even more important to pay attention to the type of fuel you use. Oil blow-by is also a common cause of O2 sensor failure in older engines. Additionally, engine coolant can seep into the combustion chamber due to a leaking gasket. This often happens in cases where the cylinder head is cracked or leaking. Oxygen sensors can also suffer from physical damage. Mechanical impacts, exposure to dirt, and water can all harm the sensor. For example, an unheated oxygen sensor, usually found in older vehicles, relies solely on hot exhaust gases to reach its operating temperature. These sensors are often more exposed and can suffer from issues like wire damage if the wires come into contact with the hot exhaust pipe. Modern vehicles often use heated oxygen sensors, which are less prone to contamination since they have an internal heat source that allows them to be placed further downstream in the exhaust system. However, they contain multiple circuits, which can be susceptible to electrical problems if not properly maintained. Heated oxygen sensors typically last longer but should still be inspected or replaced every 60,000 miles to ensure optimal performance. Symptoms of bad O2 sensor. Let's see the common symptoms of bad O2 sensor. Remember, these symptoms should be approached with caution, as they can be caused by a variety of issues beyond a faulty O2 sensor. 1. Check engine light. This is often the first sign that something is wrong with your vehicle's oxygen sensor. When the sensor starts to fail, it can send faulty data to the powertrain control module, triggering the check engine light. However, other multitude of issues like a loose gas cap, faulty spark plugs, or a malfunctioning catalytic converter can also cause the check engine light to come on. To confirm if it's the oxygen sensor, you'll need to use an OBD2 scanner to read the error codes. 2. Poor fuel economy. A failing oxygen sensor can cause your engine to run rich, meaning it's burning more fuel than necessary. This not only affects your wallet, but also leads to increased emissions. However, poor fuel economy can also be caused by a lot of other issues like dirty air filter or underinflated tires. If you notice you're filling up at the gas station more often than usual, a bad O2 sensor might be to blame, but consider these other factors as well. 3. Black smoke from the exhaust. When the oxygen sensor isn't functioning properly, it can cause an incorrect air-fuel mixture, often too rich. This results in unburnt fuel being expelled through the exhaust, which can appear as thick, black smoke. However, other potential causes include a malfunctioning fuel injector, a clogged air filter, or an issue with the engine's timing. This is not only a sign of a faulty sensor, but also indicates that your engine is not operating efficiently. 4. A strong, rotten egg odor. A failing O2 sensor can lead to incomplete combustion, causing the catalytic converter to work overtime to process unburnt fuel. This can create a sulfurous, rotten egg smell coming from the exhaust. However, this odor could also be due to a failing catalytic converter or contaminated fuel. It's a clear indicator of a problem, but be sure to check these other components as well. 5. Poor engine performance. If your car feels sluggish or hesitant when you accelerate, it could be due to a bad oxygen sensor. When the sensor fails, it can cause the engine to misfire, hesitate, or stall, especially during acceleration or at idle. However, similar symptoms can be caused by a failing fuel pump, dirty fuel injectors, or worn spark plugs. Investigate these possibilities before concluding that the O2 sensor is at fault. 6. Catalytic converter damage. The oxygen sensor plays a crucial role in protecting your catalytic converter by ensuring the correct air-fuel mixture. When the sensor fails, it can lead to excessive fuel entering the exhaust system, which can overheat and damage the catalytic converter. But make sure to diagnose the root cause thoroughly, as this can also occur due to prolonged engine misfires, oil leaks, or the use of leaded fuel. 7. Rough or erratic idle. A bad O2 sensor can cause your engine to idle roughly or unevenly. You might notice the RPMs fluctuating at idle, or the engine shaking more than usual. However, rough idle can also be due to vacuum leaks, a dirty throttle body, or failing spark plugs. 8. Failed emissions test. If your vehicle fails an emissions test, a faulty oxygen sensor could be the culprit. The sensor's job is to ensure that your engine burns fuel as cleanly as possible. However, a failed emissions test can also be caused by a malfunctioning catalytic converter or a fuel system problem. Be sure to explore all these possibilities before deciding to replace the O2 sensor. 9. Carbon buildup on spark plugs. A bad oxygen sensor can cause the engine to run rich, which leads to excessive carbon deposits on the spark plugs. This can cause misfires and reduce the overall efficiency of the engine. However, consider factors like usage of low-quality fuel, infrequent spark plug replacement, or poor engine maintenance before replacing the sensor. 10. Strange pinging or knocking sounds. If you start hearing unusual pinging or knocking noises from your engine, it could be due to a bad oxygen sensor. The mixture can become too lean or too rich, causing detonation or pre-ignition in the engine. However, these sounds can also result from using the wrong octane fuel, incorrect ignition timing, or carbon deposits in the combustion chamber. 11. Stalling engine. A faulty oxygen sensor can also cause your engine to stall, particularly when idling or coming to a stop. This happens because the sensor is not providing accurate information to the engine control unit, leading to an improper air-fuel mixture. However, stalling can also be caused by a failing fuel pump, dirty fuel injectors, or a malfunctioning idle air control valve. Investigate these components before replacing the oxygen sensor. How to diagnose O2 sensor. 1. Read fault codes. The first step in diagnosing an O2 sensor issue is to connect a diagnostic tool to your vehicle's OBD2 port and read any fault codes. Oxygen sensor faults often trigger the check engine light, but it's common to encounter multiple fault codes when dealing with O2 sensor problems. Trouble codes between P0130 and P0160 are related to O2 sensor. Codes like P0130, P0135, P031, or P0141 typically point to issues with the O2 sensor, and other codes like P0171, P0172, P0173, and P0420, and also closely related to the O2 sensor. I will not go into the details of these trouble codes now. I will write a note in the description of this video. I will also put a link to my best OBD2 scanners if you need to purchase one. So, check the description if you need. However, it can sometimes be challenging to diagnose the exact cause, as some codes may be influenced by multiple factors or other components in the vehicle. Often, multiple fault codes may appear, which can complicate diagnosis. Follow a systematic approach to test each potential cause of the fault code, including sensor performance, wiring, and related components. Different vehicles may have specific procedures or requirements for diagnosing and repairing O2 sensors. Refer to the owner's manual for accurate information. 2. Inspect the electrical connector. Inspect the O2 sensor's electrical connector for any signs of damage, corrosion, or dirt. A damaged connector can cause intermittent signals or complete sensor failure. Clean the connector if necessary and ensure that it is securely connected. 3. Check for exhaust and fuel system leaks. Inspect the exhaust manifold and fuel injectors for leaks. Leaks in these areas can introduce excess oxygen into the exhaust stream, leading to incorrect sensor readings. Also, inspect the condition of the ignition components, as faulty spark plugs or ignition coils can affect the sensor's performance. 4. Inspect the sensor's physical condition. Visually inspect the protective tube around the sensor probe element for signs of damage, contamination, or discoloration. Testing. You can test the heater and signal connections using a digital multimeter. Testing depends on sensor type, whether it's a narrowband or wideband sensor, and the number of wires it has. For a 1 or 2 wire narrowband sensor, you can just check the signal voltage. With the engine idling, a healthy sensor should show voltage fluctuating between 0.1 volt and 0.9 volt. If the voltage is steady or outside this range, the sensor is maybe faulty. You can also bench test the sensor by heating it with a propane torch to observe its voltage response. For 3 or 4 wire sensors, which include a heater element, you should additionally test the heater circuit. Check the resistance across the heater wires. A typical reading is between 3 to 10 ohms. But for a wideband O2 sensor, an OBD2 scan tool is usually the good option as it allows you to read live data and monitor the air-fuel ratio. The readings should be stable and responsive to changes in throttle input. You can check the heater circuit in the same way using a multimeter. Of course, it is better to use an OBD2 scan tool to test the signal of the other sensors also, as it provides you with a live data. Some sensors provide voltage readings, while others output current readings. Compare the readings against the vehicle manufacturer's specifications to determine if they are within the acceptable range. If the voltage is stuck in one position or behaves abnormally, the sensor may need to be replaced. How to replace an oxygen sensor. Once you make sure an O2 sensor is the problem and identify the particular sensor, replacing is a relatively straightforward process. Unplug the electrical connector. Carefully disconnect the electrical connector of the faulty sensor, ensuring not to damage any wires. Remove the old sensor. After unplugging the connector, use a spanner or a dedicated oxygen sensor socket wrench to unscrew the sensor from its seating in the exhaust system. Oxygen sensors can be quite tight, especially if they've been in place for a long time, so you may need to apply some force. Prepare the new sensor. Most oxygen sensors come pre-treated with a special electrically conductive anti-seize compound on the threads. If your new sensor doesn't come pre-treated, apply a small amount of anti-seize compound to the threads, being careful not to get any on the sensing area. Excessive anti-seize on the threads can contaminate the sensor and affect its performance. Please check the link in the description if you need to buy one. I will put a link to OEM quality upstream and downstream Denso and Bosch sensors. Check compatibility with your car before buying. Install the new sensor. Thread the new sensor into the same spot where you removed the old one. Reconnect the electrical connector. Clear fault codes. After replacing the sensor and reconnecting everything, Use your diagnostic tool to clear any fault codes related to the O2 sensor. This will reset the check engine light, allowing you to confirm that the issue has been resolved. Subscribe to the channel